If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQETV?
This is SQETV, the YouTube channel for wannabe solicitors with me, Jonny Hurst. In the latest episode, top tips for SQE1 Part 2.
SQETV.
This is the second in our short series of videos dealing with how to prepare for the SQE1 assessment. We know it's a very stressful time, and the key to actually being successful in those assessments is preparation, both mentally, physically, and obviously how you approach the day itself. So lots of top tips were covered in Part 1. There's more now to follow in Part 2.
SQETV.
Here's a top tip in relation to the timing of your revision for FLK2, which is the second part of the SQE1 assessment. The reason why I'm giving you this information is because the SRA statistics show us that students perform less well in FLK2 than they do in the FLK1 part of the SQE1 assessment. Why do we think that is? Well, partly FLK2 contains some less popular subjects like trusts, land law and property, but the real reason why students, I think, underperform in FLK2 is that they simply spend less time preparing for it because they focus more on the first of the assessments, which makes sense. And what they do is that they overestimate the amount of time that they can put in between FLK1 and FLK2 to revise for the second part of the assessment. You can mitigate that by obviously doing FLK2 revision in advance of FLK1, but also maximise the time between FLK1 and FLK2 by sitting FLK1 on the Monday of week 1 and sitting FLK2 on the Thursday or Friday of week 2.
SQETV.
Here's a top tip for dealing with difficult questions on the SQE1 assessment. Now, it's inevitable when there are 360 questions, even the best student is going to find they're stumped with a few questions. And if they're completely stumped, the best thing to do is simply just to guess and move on. Don't try and work it out if you've got absolutely nothing to go on. If you think this is going to take me a long time to work through, make a quick guess and then move on, but make a note on the virtual whiteboard that maybe if you've got time, you go back and revisit that question. Remember, it's always a good idea to have 5 minutes in your plan to go back to some questions at the end, but do make a selection as you go along, because if you do run out of time and haven't guessed the answer, then you will get 0 for that question. Remember, there's no negative marking, so you might as well make a selection as you go along, even if you're not sure or even if you're completely guessing. That way, at least there's a chance that you'll answer every question on the paper.
SQETV.
Here's a top tip for questions that involve any sort of maths that requires some sort of calculation in the exam. Top tip is actually to use the virtual calculator tool that they have available for you at the assessment. It's there for you on the screen to use. Don't try and do the sums in your head, because what you'll find is you could easily select the wrong answer, which is a really common misunderstanding of the calculations. Often by a factor of 10 or 100 you could be out. That option could be sitting there in the multiple choice distractors and you could choose it in error. So don't try and work out the sums in your head, use the calculator tool.
SQETV.
Here's a top tip for the SQE1 assessment, and that's to get familiar with the anatomy of an SQE1 MCQ, because they're all drafted in an identical way. And we'll get an example now up on the screen for you. So they start off with what we call a STEM, which is the scenario that gives you all the facts you need in order to answer the question that then follows. That then follows the actual question itself, followed by 5 options, and you choose the best option that you think is the right answer. There are 4 what we call distractors there that are tempting answers that might be right in some way but are objectively wrong in another way, answering that specific question. And the key thing is that there are no new bits of information introduced into the options. There's nothing really for you to infer from the fact pattern to get the right answer. You should be able to conclude and get to the right answer just by relying on the fact pattern in that scenario, that STEM at the beginning of the question.
SQETV.
That was part 2 of top tips for the SQE1 assessments. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do check out part 1, and remember, part 3 will be following very shortly. Remember, all our videos drop at 3 o'clock every Wednesday afternoon, so please look out for them to help you with the whole of your SQE journey. It just remains me to say thank you so much everyone for watching. We do appreciate it when you do give us some feedback on the comments below, so please do let us know what you think. And it just remains me to say, as we always do when we close a video on SQETV, it's now time for the jingle.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at MCQ.